cannot count how many times I've been confronted by Christians who tell me that because I'm no longer a Christian and I am an atheist and I'm very public and outspoken about my unbelief, that I have been deceived by Satan. He's got his strong grip on my life and I'm walking in the path of darkness. And then they usually offer prayers that I will one day see the light and gain God's understanding. And if you're an unbeliever or you're an ex-Christian, you've probably heard this once or twice too. When we leave the church, a lot of people have a lot of strong opinions, and they're going to hurl everything they can at us to keep us from leaving the faith. They've got plenty of rhetoric stored up their sleeves, and they're ready to unleash it all one by one in hopes that one does actually stick. And sometimes one does stick. One that really got me for a long time before I became confident in my unbelief and I deconstructed my fears of hell and Satan was that I was being deceived by Satan, that he was pulling me away from God and leading me down the wrong path. Like even the garden falling under his spell, so was I. And I had always been taught that the enemy comes to steal and kill and destroy. So even though I knew that I was being honest in my journey, I was following my intuition, I also knew that I had been taught not to lean on my own understanding, not to really follow my own intuition. And I knew that I was following my heart, but my heart was wicked and I shouldn't trust it. I knew I was being as honest as I could possibly be when I said, I no longer believe. I don't believe in any of it. I don't believe in God. But there was always that thought that would creep into the back of my mind, and it would be, what if? But what if I am being deceived? What if Satan has tricked me into thinking that I'm following my most authentic path, or has tricked me into thinking that I'm being rational when really I'm not? And what if it condemns me to an eternity in hell? Will I go to hell for this? Will I be punished? And after years of letting these questions and these thoughts kind of sit and marinate and, working them out, I came to one concluding question that put an end to all of this internal back and forth. And it was this: is being deceived a crime? And if being deceived is a crime, is it a crime worthy of eternal damnation or punishment? Or even at the least eternal separation from what is supposed to be eternal love and goodness and compassion? When I first asked myself this question, is being deceived a crime? It was like my eyes opened up. It was like a jolt, one of those light bulb moments. And I realized that within the context of an all-loving, compassionate, kind, understanding, wise God, there could not be any punishment for being deceived. That would be unfair and unjust. And then when you add omnipotence and omniscience into the mix, it becomes cruel to punish someone for being deceived. Think about it. When you are being deceived, you're being tricked. You don't know that you're being deceived. Otherwise, it wouldn't be called being deceived. It would be called rebellious or something like that. But to be deceived is to be tricked unknowingly by someone else, to be made a victim of someone else. The dictionary defines it as causing someone to believe something that is untrue, usually for personal gain or advantage. And so how on earth could you justify punishing someone for being victimized? Now, you could argue, well, ignorance doesn't exempt you from the law. And while that is true in many cases, sometimes ignorance does kind of get you out of punishment for certain crimes that you might unknowingly commit. But the law is available to all citizens. It is readily available. Each and every one of us have access to every law and the consequences of breaking the law. We don't have anything as concrete as that from God. Sure, some people might argue we have the Bible, but also some people would argue that we have other religious texts or that we have divine inspiration. There's so many different religious ideologies and books and guides that it would be impossible to sort through it all to determine what actually is the law from God outside of personal bias and interpretation. Even within the Christian communities, there are tens of thousands of denominations, and they all disagree with one another on what sin is, what is God's law, whether or not you follow the 10 Commandments. There's so much confusion around God's law, it's not concrete, and there's no proof that God even exists in the first place. There's no proof of the consequences of breaking the law. We can see that prisons exist. We can go to the prison and find out that, well, this is where you go if you break the law, but nobody's ever been to hell. Nobody's ever suffered the consequence of not following God's law and then come back to let us all know how it went. Everybody's just basing it off of faith. And that's not concrete enough for me to want to follow any specific law given to me by any other person. Now, going back a little bit, when you throw omniscience and omnipotence into the mix, this all-knowing, all-powerful creator deity, the punishment for being deceived becomes even more cruel and heartless. Because not only is God punishing you for being made a victim, but he's punishing you for being made a victim of someone he created. And not only someone he created, but someone he created with foreknowledge, with intent. God knew that he was going to create Satan and what Satan would become. God still chose to create Satan. He still chose to accept the outcome of what would be if Satan were to come into existence. And then allegedly when Satan fell from heaven and God cast him out, God didn't just get rid of him or banish him to the eternal flaming pits. No, he put him on earth to roam around with his beloved human creation. As it states in Genesis, the serpent, who many Christians believe was Satan, was the most crafty and cunning beast on the earth. God knew how crafty and cunning he was. He created him to be that way. And yet he still put him on earth, and he still expected his little ignorant human puppets to resist his deceit and resist his temptations. They say, oh, you're being deceived by Satan. Well, who's the one that gave Satan the ability to deceive? And why is he punishing you for being deceived by the one that he created to deceive you? And if you are being deceived, the most loving thing a Father God can do for you is help you, save you, to keep you out of harm's way. If God really is your Father and he's supposed to act in that role, then his job is to love and protect you, not punish you when you're tricked and made a victim. The bottom line is this: if someone is telling you that you have been deceived by Satan, you have no rational or logical reason to believe that within the context of a good and loving and compassionate God, you would ever be punished for that. Christians want to eat their cake and have it too. They want to claim that God is all loving and graceful and compassionate and understanding and wise and good. But then they also say that he'll punish you for being tricked by someone that he created. These two things do not align. It doesn't compute. They cannot claim that God is so powerful and in control and wise, and also claim that he so foolishly put Satan in with his creation, mixed him in to give him the opportunity to trick those that he supposedly loved and want a relationship with, and want to enjoy all of heaven's eternal bliss with. Eventually, you have to start questioning this character of God that they're serving you. Who is he? What are his intentions? Is he really good? Is he really loving? Does he really want to punish you for being tricked? That's when this God character starts to crack, and it all starts to kind of fall apart. And eventually, in my experience, if you follow those questions long enough, the entire thing just crumbles. And the God concept as provided in Christianity, it becomes nonsensical and non-existent and a lot easier to dismiss. And that's when those fears start to trickle out too. That's when you stop fearing that Satan is getting inside your mind and trying to trick you. That's when you stop fearing this spiritual warfare going on around you and this risk of your eternal soul. And when you really kind of unpack it and step away and look at it from kind of the outside, you start to see it a lot more as tools of manipulation and power and control. And not by a God, not by a deity, not by anything supernatural, but by the people here on earth that are looking to reign over you. This is all about control, and it always has been about control. When these Christians are lashing out at you and they're accusing you of being deceived, you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to question whether your soul is at risk. If the God that they believe in is so good and loving, he will be understanding, or he wouldn't let you get deceived in the first place. And if he's not so good and loving and compassionate, then he's not the God that they talk about. And maybe it might be time to start finding him on your own. Or maybe you've already figured out that you don't believe in him and you still have those lingering fears. I hope that this video has helped you. I hope that it's helped kind of unpack this a little bit more, deconstruct this difficult conversation we tend to have with the believers still in our lives, and give you the confidence and the voice that you need to defend yourself in those situations if you feel that you need to. I hope you keep following your intuition, leaning on your own understanding, and following the questions wherever they may lead. If you like my videos and you want to support me, you can subscribe to my channel, you can leave a comment, leave a like, you can also follow me on TikTok or join my Patreon. I will leave the links in the description. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you next time.